Tonight, we've got a really exciting presentation. We've been talking about this all summer. We're really excited to welcome Mike Robbins from Helios Design Labs, coming from the Great White North, Toronto.
It's kind of great.
Is there snow there yet? Or no? Is there snow yet? Or?
No, it's actually warmer there than it is here.
So we're so psyched that Mike could make the trip down to New York and welcome him here. We've been big fans of the work that Mike and Helios has done, basically a who's who of interactive projects and interactive documentaries, and really excited for him to tell us about them and get a peek at some stuff that he's working on too. So with no further ado, please welcome Mike Robbins.
Just trying to think of how to make this useful for you guys rather than just for me. And I guess, part of, maybe I'll start. I'm Mike. I work at a company called Helios. My job there, actually for many years we didn't have names, just names like Mike and Alex and Felix but we had a friend of ours started working with us, and she was kind of like something from Dr. Dolittle, and she named all the animals, and so we got a creative director, and then we got like a producer, and that was her. And then I got called this weird thing called a creative technologist, and if you Google creative technologist, which I did right after getting my new name, the first 5 entries is what is a creative technologist ? Which actually I think is kind of, I'm good with that, because that means you can kind of make shit up as you go along, and that's kind of what we've specialized in. Over the last 20 years. We started off as a print design studio and making mostly just album covers. And then I joined. I'd lied my way into the job by falsely stating that I knew about computers. Actually, at the time, I thought computers were stupid. I still kind of do. So you see, I've got 2 computers, which some people might think is cool, but I'd sort of think is like as a sign, as I was saying earlier, of mild failure. So stick with me on that. And anyways, so we started doing some sort of interactive internet stuff, and we kind of made it up. Or I had no idea. Like my first day on the job, I was doing something with this thing called Photoshop, which was like amazing, and somebody was saying, "Did you save that, Mike?" And I was saying, "No, why do I need to?" And it's just like, "Well, okay, never mind. You'll find out." And so, like at some point, the mouse froze and it wouldn't move, and I said, "Hey, listen, Richard, what's going on? It's not, you know." And he says, "You've crashed and you've lost everything." And I was like, "No, I can still see it." And say, well, you know, you'll find out. And I've spent the last, I guess, 12 years finding out. So I'm making stuff up as we go along. But I guess, like for us, and kind of why I'm here today, a watershed moment for us was in 2009, starting to work for a Canadian company called Research in Motion. And they made the BlackBerry. Not so popular anymore, but back in the day, this was the device that, to me, kind of started to revolutionize our life. Something that you could carry the internet with you. It did more than just talk, and it was this. What they were selling was a sort of like a mobility. That was the term, mobility, and it kind of got a bit old, that term, especially because it gets overused by marketing people at BlackBerry. But anyways, what was important for us at that time was that we could actually work on a product. And that's what we still called it back then, that we believed in, and that we actually felt it wasn't. We weren't working for we were actually at that point a commercial studio, and so we'd do like ads, commercials, post-production work, animation, even websites for products. And a lot of the times, because you are an ad agency or working at the advertising world, working with ad agencies, you work with stuff that you don't necessarily believe in. And And if you can try and make yourself believe it, then you become evil. Um, but the thing was is that this was an eye opener, that you could actually work with something that you felt was important, and that you worked with people that were so passionate about it that you became this thing called you were collaborating on something, and it was actually not so much a client service provider kind of relationship. This was a day in, day out collaboration. You were working on something together, and that kind of lifted the carpet up a bit. So then what crept out of the carpet as we lifted up was the NFB, National Film Board of Canada, in the guise of a director called Kat Cizik and her producer Jerry Flahive. And they asked us whether we'd like to collaborate with them on this project called High Rise, and so they hadn't actually. It wasn't formalized. The NFB hadn't even actually been sold on the idea. And our initial dealings with the High Rise project was to help them build a prototype that they could show the people at the NFB and saying, kind of a bold proposition. And this was another thing that we weren't used to, or I wasn't used to, the idea of bold propositions, that you could go to the government of Canada and saying, we want to build a project about high rises. It's going to use the internet. It might, we actually don't know what it's going to use. We know it's going to take 5 years. We know it's going to be about high rises, and we know it's going to be from around the world, not necessarily just in Canada. And we also know that it's going to cost $1 million. And, and this was like, this was a bold and daring maneuver. And so we started working on this prototype, and then the good news is that the NFB, National Film Board, did actually go for it and went with it. And so this 5-year project, we've kind of, our roles have shifted from little mini project. The High Rises is a collection of smaller parts. And we were sort of like, we got called the house band, so that we do sort of various functions in various parts of the project. So for instance, Out My Window was the first major one after that, after the prologue. And then we did all the video editing and the compositing and it was like 53 short films, all made out of still photographs. And that for us was like another amazing thing that you could actually make moving pictures with other media other than just film. And this was like another sort of lifting up the carpet. And then we went on to do the programming for the 1 Millionth Tower. And that was discovery of WebGL. And I don't know, how technical do you want? Do you want me to totally nerd out here? And this was in 2009, I think, 2010. So WebGL had just come out, and it was like this amazing thing to see a spinning cube, and this is the point. It's like this, almost like this eureka thing, like in your bathtub, running out and saying, "This is amazing." And you'd show the rest of my friends at Helios and saying, "Look, it's a spinning cube," and it was like, okay. But that was, we're able to make shit up as we went along with that, and kind of stretch that out into a narrative and a 3D space, a reconstruction, a kind of sort of visualization of a high-rise space somewhere. It could have been in Toronto. Actually, it was in Toronto, but it was like this leap that was like for us, this amazing leap from cube to space, and that was sort of another interesting thing, is that it extended the idea of collaboration So we'd worked with the people from Mozilla, who were sort of busily laying the foundation for WebGL and the specs and answering questions, because I didn't know what I was doing and still don't. So from there, we went to I guess the short history of High Rise, and once again that was like an editing, not so much editing, all the film itself, the video. So we able to sort of balance our coding with our film and our design skills. And I guess that's sort of, that big long story is sort of like a church sermon in a way, boring, but it all comes down to a point that what we've kind of learned is that the division between what we see as a filmmaker and a coder and a designer and a producer, these barriers are I think are what I consider perceived barriers. That they're only in there as your mind. And I think actually Mike said, this crowd, I think you described them as makers. Is that a good term? And so I was going to do the usual thing. How many people here are filmmakers, and how many people are coders, and how many people are designers, and how many people are producers? But then I can ask the question, how many people are makers? And that should be everybody. And I think that this is kind of our education, my education that still goes on, is that like projects that we make, or lots of people make, and it's like film. Actually, film is the input of many. These are works of collaboration. You can't have a film made by one person. I mean, you could, but most films are the end of the movie. You see the credits, and there's hundreds of people, and those are all people working in tandem. There's not hundreds of people working on our projects, but each one of them comes from a different discipline, and kind of learns, I think, from the other people, because filmmakers, I mean, we work primarily now with people that describe themselves as filmmakers on things that we call film projects, which is great because this is a sort of a film program. And I still weirdly consider this a film medium, which is, you have to call it something or think of it as something. But for us, like when we work with somebody like Kat, or eventually I'll lead you all to After the Storm. Andrew Beck-Grace is an Alabama filmmaker, and he considers himself a filmmaker. But the process of making the project After the Storm with him, he came to us wanting, this whole paradigm of nonlinearity, and guys, here's the I want you to make me nonlinear. And it was like, but Andrew, to me actually, I really like the film medium. I like the linearity of it. I like the immersiveness. I like the language of film. And so this is what I get, or what we get from a maker like Andrew. We get the film language, and then he likes the language of interactivity, of nonlinearity, of abstraction, of oh, how did you do that? That sort of thing. And then he pulls that from us. So we're actually both kind of, both sides are kind of feeding off of each other, or looking for something that they have that we don't have. And I think that the projects, the best ones, and they don't always work out, are the can't believe I just said that and laughed. Are the ones that kind of meet in the middle, and that we actually, both sides come away learning something from the other, and both sides actually will want to do and can't wait to do another project together. So what I was going to do is rather than show you like stuff we've done, like the high rise and after the storm even, these all exist on the internet. You should, check it out at your own speed. And because it's kind of boring actually watching somebody go through stuff, but I'm going to bore you with some stuff that we're working on right now. And I guess I'm sort of showing these as examples of how we work, or how our projects that we work on together with filmmakers can visually end up being many different things. They all actually end up being the same, as like they're on a computer and on a screen, so they have that similarity. But they're all different, and that is entirely to do with what the story is, and that's sort of like this, once again, like this storyteller, filmmaker, coder, designer, all sort of come together in this something like this. Now this right here is a project that we started, I guess in springtime. It's a Kipu project. Are you guys familiar with this at all? Has anybody? Sort of. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit about it. It's still, as you see, in its complete infancy. It's some filmmakers, the Peruvian filmmakers, one of whom now lives in Chile and the other one lives in London. But they've been documenting in the Andean highlands during the 90s under the regime of Alberto Fujimori. 300,000 people. Indigenous people were forcibly sterilized, and in sort of a program of eugenics pushed by the Fujimori government, and the most, if not all, of the people were forcibly sterilized either through ignorance or through restraint, and it's only now that, sort of 20 years later, that it's starting to come out, because his daughter is, I believe, running for election in Peru. So it's scraping up a lot of memories. Fujimori, as you know, he was exiled a number of years ago, and with him went a lot of these sort of bad memories. But things like this don't just disappear. So how this project is working and being put together is the means of collecting these stories is as much part of the actual story and the way that we listen or appreciate the stories is in that all these villages are quite remote, and the only sort of really digital form of communication that they have or way of capturing stuff is through phone. And so what the Kipu is, the project is what I'm showing you here is the front end. The back end of this is actually a phone system that people in these villages can dial in, and it's a phone menu. And so you can press 1 to leave a testimony, or press 2 to hear a testimony. And so there's that, through that phone, there's that sort of interactivity. And the phone goes to a voice over IP system that's very sort of cleverly managed by a Drupal backend. So quickly going into the technical aspect of it, and then what we do is we're sort of pulling those phone messages back into a sort of visual web interface. So what you're seeing here is like sort of content management. Strange enough, we're using Google spreadsheet as like our CMS here, which somehow mixes in on the back end to the Drupal module, and this works great because this means the filmmakers, Rosa Maria, both are sort of traipsing either around through the highlands of Peru or in Chile or in England can do it themselves. So all this content is managed is completely self-driven through the most primitive means possible. And so it's starting with the phone, and then on sort of like the story collection level, and then it goes through Google spreadsheets and ends out on this interface. So the idea too is the Kipus are well, there, it tells you. This is all placeholder text, so this is super early.
Collecting data and keeping records in tasks, census, and military organization. Keepers were used to aid narrative, combining prompts from memory and language through visual signs and tactile processes. We use the keepers to symbolize our project because we too are recording oral information and are using a virtual keeper to aid our collective memory, ensuring that the proven sterilizations are never forgotten.
So just another quick explanation of what's going on here. Apart from, okay, I'll pause this for now. So what these audio files get transcribed through yet another really sort of hands-on thing. It's called AMARA, which used to be Universal Subtitles, and that's sort of a crowdsourced subtitling, sort of community-based service. So all these subtitles are kind of given. The files are given to Amira. They come back, and then we pull them in and sort of merge them with Popcorn, which is like another old thing, and kind of low tech. But once again, it's something that once we've set it up, it's something they have complete, kind of editorial control over. I've made a system here so that they can do edits within the audio. So this is where they can go into their Google spreadsheet and kind of pull out the parts that we want to hear. What also? Oops, sorry. What also is going on here too is that intrinsically the stories, the audio stories themselves can be treated in a really non-linear fashion, but what they've done is the video story behind that actually progresses in a linear fashion, and so as you go through the whole experience, as you listen to the stories, the picture is telling you something in a linear, sort of, but very subtle and ultimately sort of revealing fashion. So you get this like non-linear experience with a very linear sort of backdrop, or whether you choose to acknowledge it or recognize it, that's up to you as the audience, but that's definitely the intent. And then the main thing, this is the part that we're working on right now. This is like the phone lines. You do have this call initial call to action. So it's dial 1 if you're phoning in to leave a story, and or to hear a story, and then dial 2 or click 2 to leave a story. So what we're trying to this is sort of like the next big part of the project, is to make the actual response part so that it makes it easy for people to respond and to leave a message, to actually generate content. And this is the kind of part that everybody's kind of scared of, and rightfully so. User-generated content, that's this is the hardest thing, the most tilting at windmill concept ever. It's like if you ask the users to generate content, you're almost doomed to failure. Probably because you're calling them users, probably because they're generating something, and probably because you're calling it content. And I think that's something we're struggling with, and it's kind of interesting too for us dealing with Ross and Maria and Sebastian, their team, is that they're very much English as a second language, but they're very eloquent, and they bring a lot of kind of interesting use of words. So I think a big part of this, and that's what we're working on right now, is sort of like the semantics involved in getting people to be engaged enough to leave a message and to want to do that. And so that's to be continued. You guys can ask questions too as they go along. Yeah. that was a huge amount of discussion involved with that, is whether you actually leave messages directly to an individual or to the collective. I think the idea is to leave it to the collective. Probably because too is that a lot of the story, or the way that stories are consumed, that's a bad word, sorry, are listened to, are experienced, are in these cross threads. You see that when we can choose like a narrative through many different testimonies. So, but the idea is to always have everywhere that sort of split. I can listen, or I can leave a message. I can talk. And I think the other main thing that we'd like to do with this is, sorry, did you have your? Okay, is also to actually have, I think quite often, and this is how we initially started here, was like, click here to reply, to respond. And it's like, I can see, well, it's always a big problem. Click here, what do I do? And I think that's kind of like still the beauty of the phone line. It's kind of perverse that we try to get away from the phone menu. But I know that we had a mayor in Toronto who said, okay, under my rulers, my ruling, there's going to be no phone menus at City Hall. Everybody who phones will be answered by a human being. He was the guy who did crack, but yeah. Yes.
Okay, and then the second thing is, how did the project solicit stories to begin with? What was the mechanism to identify who these people were? How were they called? How were they speaking? How were they involved?
See, now this is the important part that I think a lot of people don't fully understand when they embark on projects like this, and this is what happens, why the user-generated content paradigm usually fails, is that it's a lot of hard work involved in sort of actually physically being there. And so what Rose and Maria, as a filmmaking team, spent a year, or like over a year, in Peru, in the highlands. They're from Peru, so they know this is sort of like their home. Yes, and these networks are a lot of them old, sort of older forms of networking. We would consider older forms of networking, like radio. It's huge. So these villages all sort of cluster around. There'll be a local radio station. Yeah.
I have a question about like working with the filmmaker to kind of plan out the story, because how much of the thinking about what shape this was going to take? I mean, obviously you're dealing with the limitations of the technology or what have you, but can you describe a little bit about the filmmaker sort of collaboration and what kinds of stages or conversation are appreciated or appropriate when you're thinking of interactive story?
Sure. Why don't I move on to a different project to illustrate that with? Actually, here's a project that's in very much in development stages. This is it's actually even changed its name from what we've called it here. It's a friend of mine, and she's a filmmaker in Toronto, and she's made films forever. She made a film called Love at the Twilight Motel, and a story about she sort of cohabited with prostitutes in a motel in I think in Toronto. But in any event, her abiding passion has been astronomy, and she spent the last, I guess, 5 years making a film that's finally been released. It's called Starman, and it's about four ancient astronomers. They're ancient now, but I guess 60 years ago, 50 years ago, they went on this expedition together as postgraduate students. They moved from England, and they went to California to finish up their studies. And each one of these guys went on to become sort of an integral figure of modern astronomy. And we live since the Second World War, so in the 1950s, astronomy has been, this is the golden age of astronomy that we live in. And what's sort of interesting for this is that there's a film. There's a film that she's made for this, and but this is also something that she wants to do as an interactive part, sort of an interactive expression of of the film. And the film is very much about these four men, and they all meet up again, and they're all like in their 80s now, and they go for this one last hike where they went on this field trip as young men. They go back to do this. One of them's dying, and so there's some urgency to the whole proceedings, and this is kind of it is like a feel. It's not necessarily a feel-good movie because it's one about mortality and friendship but then against the backdrop of astronomy, and then for the interactive component, which I'll bring you through. What she wanted to do was to reverse all that, was to sort of bring astronomy forefront, and then the people in their relationships and their humanity part, kind of as a backdrop to the science and the visuals of the universe that we live in. And hopefully I'm answering your question here. So the whole process there comes with this idea, and then there's a really practical part of this thing, and I can bring this back into the practical world. How it works in Canada to get stuff made, funding. Funding, of course, is one of the biggest parts of bringing projects like this into reality. And how the funding models work in Canada, the main forms of revenue or funding for nonfiction, documentary filmmaking is an organization called the Canadian Media Fund, CMF, and then there's one called the Bell New Media Fund, and then of course there's the NFB, but they're not really sort of funding agencies. But what they do is that if you want to make a film, you have to make an interactive component to go along with this film. You have to budget for that. It needs to be part of the film. And if you make an interactive component, this is where things become kind of like the snake eating its tail, is you have to make you have to have a film or a TV broadcast property with it. So there's by law, by the laws of the nature that the Canadian funding jungle has set up, this is the reality. And so what this started off with was like 10 years ago, was kind of like a pork barrel. This is like, yeehaw, we can make a digital media component, and we can get like $200,000 to basically make a piece of shit, and nobody cared. But then as the audience grew a little bit more in sophistication, but then also the juries grew more in sophistication, but the people who became the most sophisticated were the ones handing out the money, saying, where's our money going? And so now it's become this really, it's a lot more sort of tightly governance, and people spend a lot more time looking at proposals, what they do, what they say, how they relate to the film. How does the film relate to the digital component? How does the digital component relate to the film? So a filmmaker like Allison now is faced with like, okay, now I have to make something really cool. How do I do this? And so for her, and this is how we'll come up to somebody like Andy, who I talked about before. For them, it's kind of like an exploratory period, saying, well, what is there out there? What are the other examples? That's one thing you need to look for. And then the other thing is like, who are my peers that are actually making stuff that I like? And then who are they working with? And because like what I was saying before, is none of these things get made by a single person. So that's what Allison did. She came and said, I'd like to make this thing, and I like these projects. And this is what kind of happens for us, because we worked on some stuff that other people kind of like, and so they say, you know, how did they make that? And say, well, this is, how much does it cost? And they say, well, it could be this, and then what we end up doing is sort of shaping those ideas around a proposal. And you have the idea, you know, what is going to be about, and quite often, like the actual, what does it do is a different thing. So here, once again, interrupt me at any point. So what this turned out to be, we found, or Allison, because of her relationship that she had with the astronomy world, like she'd actually spent a year taking off from the filmmaking part to actually work at an astronomy lab in the University of Toronto, which I thought was a pretty brave thing to do. And through that, she found out that there's Microsoft Research, which is sort of like the more R&D part of Microsoft, which is actually the cool part of Microsoft, the only cool part left of Microsoft, if there is such a thing, has a project called the Worldwide Telescope. And what the Worldwide Telescope is this way to make kind of like slideshows of traveling through the universe, so that astronomers can actually use this as like as part of like their explaining what they're thinking to other people. It can be used in classrooms. It's sort of like PowerPoint, but for with like a whole pile of astronomical data attached to this. And as you see here, as we go through this, Microsoft just released an HTML5 API, which was like not documented, but it sort of worked, and they said, here it is. We don't know anything about it because the guy who's making it, he's gone mad. And so do what you will. And so we had to make it up as we went along. But this was like this great idea and this was actually what I thought was the coolest and most important part of this thing. Is it wasn't something that we thought of, or I thought of, something that Allison, as the filmmaker, she self-proclaimed digital Luddite, saying, Mike, I don't know anything, but here's this cool thing called the Worldwide Telescope. Do you think we can do anything with this? And I was saying, hell, this is awesome, because this goes like, and so the idea now is we're using this as a camera. So like this was the other thing that sort of discovered with like WebGL, is that the idea that you can actually create a camera within the browser, and you kind of turn it over to the audience, and the audience kind of can point it where they want it, and they can and you can make this camera do different things that like an ordinary physical camera can't do. So and this is why I still consider this filmmaking, because this right here is a camera. It's just it's just showing us different things. And so here, so the Worldwide Telescope, we have all these, sort of ways to, so this is one of their moon models, and we can kind of subvert it to our own. So these are sort of embedded into her narrative. And so our job now is to extend this just a bit more, and to hack it a bit more, and to make it more part of Allison's story. But I mean, they have so many cool things. Like here, hopefully it comes in. Oh, I think it's set of Wi-Fi. It's not so bad. So this here actually is a panorama taken by the last Apollo mission to the moon. So this would be the mid-'70s, and somebody stood there on the moon and took a whole pile of photographs they stitched together to form like a street view of sorts of the moon. So this is kind of like astonishing to realize that this existed in the mid-'70s, and as we go through it, it kind of has a weird presence to it, and we just get to the my computer's acting up here, but hopefully we find, where are you? No. Well, actually, no, we're the aliens. Yeah. So there's just this dum-de-dum-dum-dum, you know, and I think this is sort of weird. It not only sort of bridges the time, this is like 40, 50 years ago, it's a distance. Like this seems like this you could have, actually, no, sorry, they probably did do it on Earth. But this is what I'm saying. This camera, this I consider a lens, and it's much in the same way. The first thing, this I have to. This is just a composite, but the IIS, the International Space Station, has the GoPros. Well, not the GoPros, but the cameras. So they have like a video feed. So not right now, but we have the live version. I'm hoping that they keep it going longer than they said it's supposed to end this year. So I'm hoping they just forget about it and don't stop it. Yeah, exactly. And then so we've built a way so we can pull in images and different and film and all this thing. So what you see here is like the video, these images, all this stuff is all being pulled through the Worldwide Telescope API. Yeah.
What does that API give you back? Like, what do you ask for and what do you get back?
Oh, a bunch of things. So I spent probably about 2 weeks, full on 2 weeks, going through in the console and the console and logging it, seeing the structure. So at the core of it, it's once again it's WebGL, and you can embed all these. They have all these embedded models. But now found out you can actually hook models into this, so that you can also create sort of media instances as well. So we can say sort of like write a hook function that leads back into the API. So we can embed like video clips and audio. And does that answer your question, or?
Yes, you get back the actual models back.
Yeah. Yeah, so these models actually come, but what our next job is to do is to supply our own model library. So these all come from, they have a repo, a repo that pulls these models in. But what will be better for us? But it's going to be tricky because models we just can't make shit up. So especially for this, because for Allison she's super pure about things. So we'll be working with. We actually have she's a bunch of physicists who actually do animations as part of their work. So to tie those in, which will be probably a little bit more boring than what us Luddites would come up with. Like we'd probably have like Silver Surfer or something like that in. And so. So that to us is a camera. I was going to show you this. This is like an older project. Yeah, sorry? Yeah. No, you can download it. And it's documented. It's got a set of documents that are from like 2 or 3 years ago. But if you want, I can send you my documentation when it's ready, which will probably be another 2 or 3 years, so. Sorry. Yeah. I think like cut your throat, kill your mother kind of thing, or yeah. I would say yeah. There's one. I don't think it's as competitive as it is in the States. Like I know that from my own bitter experience, that working or doing something for like the TFI New Media grant. I think there's like many thousands are called, but so many few are chosen, and I would say. The Bell New Media Fund is actually probably one of the easiest ones. I think the success rate for that is probably around 15%. Bell New Media Fund. And that's one of the ones that you need. You can do an interactive interactive component, but they look for the TV or film. So that's one half of the snake. And then the other half of the snake is the Canada Media Fund. And yeah.
I had another question about funding. These things obviously need high-end equipment also to run, or modern equipment. Is there ever a requirement in the application that it has to be rated for people who may not have a fast computer or the latest browser
In a word, no. No, I think that's sort of a decision that's made fairly early on in the project, and I think unless you did, I mean, we actually have done projects like that. Like High Rise was one of them. So where we can turn a WebGL experience into something that works on, just this, a collection of YouTube videos, which is fine. And I think that's a good question. I mean, it does occur to us that but on the other hand, what is sort of high end now is definitely going to be sort of the medium. 2 years. We've got projects that were probably had like 10% of the 10% of our audience could actually see them, or that was but that 3 years ago. But now that's more or less like 70% or 80%.